Hey guys, what is up? Swim here, and today I wanted to do a guide for a strategy that has existed from auto chess called open forting. Open forting is basically when you play 0 units on your board for the first several rounds of the game. It's seen very predominantly at high MMR. This is a highly competitive strategy that you see a lot of players running. I'm just going to show you guys kind of a demonstration of how it works. It's a very unique and kind of like backwards playstyle, so it's very satisfying if you want to kind of play in an alternative method. Let's jump into a game. Okay, so we enter the first human round, round 4, and let's take a look at our situation. So we found a second Warlock, 2 Tinkers, a second Bloodseeker, but basically a hodgepodge of kind of like random assorted units. We can't really do too much with this, right? We're not going to get a great board. We have 2 Warriors, Tiny and Axe, but we can't really like complete very much. We've got Bloodbound, but it's not very good synergy overall in the early game. So we're looking at a pretty weak start, no 2 stars, no real synergies, no directions given to us by our items. But what we can do is we can sell every unit on these board, get up to 10 gold for the first interest point, and go ahead and start the next round. So, because we were doomed to lose these fights anyway, check it out. This guy has a 2-star bat. He was going to win this fight no matter what we did. As an example, we might have lost a little bit less health if we had units in, but probably only like 1 health, because the way fights tend to work in Underlords is that they tend to be very snowbally, which is to say the winning player usually wins, especially in these early rounds, with a lot of units left over, right? So even in the case where we could have saved a bit of health, probably not very much health, and we're better off just playing for these interest points, because keep in mind, at the start of each round, every 10 gold you have turns into 1 more gold, up to 50, which is a really, really big deal. So getting these interest points early will pay off in a major way, and that is the entire idea of this open fort kind of strategy, where you just don't even play for the board at all. And again, this is something that is run in very competitive ranks, especially if early on you see the silver lining global item. If you see that, you can snap off this strategy even if you have like good 2-star unit that you might have to sell out of to make this work, because silver lining makes it all worth it, even though the strategy is already good without it. Okay, so the next question you might ask is, well, what do we do from here? And the answer is you can, if you want to, play a little bit dangerously, try to mitigate the damage you take by looking at other players. You can look at like the bottom boards, the ones that are taking damage, because these are the ones with the weakest boards. Identify the weakest board in your mind, which in my mind is probably this one, that of Gwendoline with 2 axes, a tree, and a drow. And then you can put in units up until that point, so that you guarantee you're going to lose, but maybe take a little bit less damage than you would have otherwise. So for example, we can run something like this. Now, this is a bit of a risk because you do not want to risk breaking your lose streak. That's another thing the open fort strategy tends to do, which is lose streak, right? Because the way streaking works is that even when you're winning or losing, it doesn't matter, both streaks will give you extra gold. So not only are you gaining the interest gold early, but you're gaining the streak value early. So check this out. We queued into the opponent that we kind of geared ourselves to face, right? We sacrificed this this Warlock a little bit early, so hopefully, we will still lose to this. It might be a little bit close with the Warlock being healed up here. But I do think that the board will beat us. As you can see, we didn't even kill a single unit, right? This is kind of what I mean when I say it's pretty much pointless to even try to fight. If you're going to lose, you might as well be losing with maximum lose streak and interest. So I will say the one thing to be very, very careful about, be very, very careful about accidentally winning a board. So if you're going to try to play a few units on your board, first of all, make sure you're hitting this interest point. That's the #1 thing, right? Make sure we have 20 gold. So we only have a budget of 2 gold to spend here if we want to try to kill something, and none of these are going to make a difference with that. But also check other people's boards and see exactly what they're doing. You do not want to risk accidentally winning a board. Some people are going to be sneaky, especially as you enter high levels, and other people might do this as well. You can be sneaky and have units on your board and then take them off at the very, very last second. Because if someone else is doing this and they see you have some units, they might actually bait themselves into putting units on their board and trying to protect a little bit of their HP. So as an example to that, if I'm in a game and if I see someone else lose streaking, so check this out. What I can do is I can buy these 4 units, you know, it's round 7. Let's say I see this Chen Bot. Let's say I notice him lose streaking. I buy these 4 units, right? I put them on the board. Maybe he gets cheeky. Maybe he thinks he can run a few units, but I sell these really quick right before it ends. Maybe he didn't realize that in time. You know, we're up to 30, and maybe we tricked him into running a few units. If he queues into us, his lose streak gets stopped, which is a really, really big deal if you see 2 people doing this in the same game, which at high levels is pretty common right now, especially with the silver lining item in the game. So the first real challenge of this build is going to start creeping up on round 10, where you have to face the mud golems, which are pretty easy if you know exactly what to look for. So the trick is, starting round 7 through round 10, you can actually start benching some units. You'll note at round 7 we have exactly 30 gold, which means up until this point we cannot buy any units that we are intending to keep throughout the creep round, because otherwise we'll hurt our interest point. But starting round 7, we have a total of 4 packs to be able to beat the creeps with. What we can do is we can see we've got a pretty good pack here, a tiny, a razor, and a pudge. Might as well buy these other 2 since there's no reason not to. And we're already snapshotted in for the 3 gold interest on the 30 gold start, because of the new system where it snapshots at the start of combat. So you buy during combat on round 7, and then from then on we've got 9 gold exactly to float on our bench. As we can see, we've got a surplus. There's no way for us to hit 40 gold here. It's actually impossible, so we don't have to actually go for it. We can basically, at this point in time, just chill here, keep these units on our bench, and these are going to come in handy for beating the creep round on 10. We can even, you know, dip into this. We can double dip into this by buying this tusk again. So what you're looking for to be able to beat the creep round are primordial units, usually tiny and morphling, but any primordial pair you can get, druids or warriors. These are the 3 best alliances for the early game and just like successfully eliminating these creeps easily. So obviously we just want to make sure we're hitting every interest point. So here we can just sell something like the Furion and the second tusk. We don't really need the third one, so we just hit every interest points. You know, we can buy these out, doesn't really matter. And once we are against the primordials, there's a specific way to beat them with positioning. So the trick with the primordial units, or sorry, the mud golems, the trick with beating the mud golems is effectively you want your units to try to focus them as much as possible without themselves being focused. So the mud golems have a very specific spawn pattern, which we can abuse here. We again want to be hitting this interest point, but that's no problem. We can just go ahead and put in something like this. This should do just fine against them. Sell up to exactly 50 gold interest, and we can even use a couple of these items to ensure we have a slightly better time, although I don't think this should be an issue. So you'll notice my positioning here. We have the 3 primordial units paired off right in front of where the mud golems spawn. Keep in mind, it's very important to note where they spawn. It's these 3 spaces right here, to increase the odds as much as possible of them attacking these primordial units and disarming themselves very quickly. Unfortunately, our Pudge ended up picking a little bit of that fire there, so this is actually a little bit close, but with these disarms you can pretty much always just beat it out. Very important with this strategy that you are able to beat this creep round. Not having choice of the item you want is really, really bad, so make certain that you are able to beat the creep round before continuing. So at this point in the game, the build is basically complete. As you can see, we've exceeded 50 gold, and 50 is the maximum interest point, so we can burn gold until we're down to 50, no problemo, and even only at the start of the fight too, we can go under that during the fight. And the trick here for the rest of the game is deciding when we really want to stop our lose streak. We happen to have 72 health remaining, as you can see here, which is totally plenty. Lose streaking is still going to generate more money, so if it's all the same, we still want to just peel off our units and continue losing. Typically, you want to end your lose streak at around, typically between, I would say, round 13 and round 16 is kind of like about the perfect time to be ending a streak. You're going to want to try to beat the wolf pack in a very similar way to, you know, how we beat mud golems, abusing these creeps that are very good, abusing heroes that are very good against these creep rounds, and we can kind of start collecting what we're looking for. So now that we have more than enough interest, we start kind of playing the game, right? We start actually like looking for pairs, trying to complete sets, and developing a bit of a strategy. And then the only question after that is, which strategy do you want to build this into? And right now, the obvious answer is mages. Mages just make the most sense with this, because mages are very powerful at the current moment before they get nerfed, but also they're going to do very well without any early game backup, right? The whole point of mages is they suck early and they come online late, and any build that can be defined in that way is very good with this strategy, because you can kind of skip the early game, right? So builds like trolls, builds like knights, maybe, if knights are a little bit better and they're getting buffed, maybe they've already been buffed by the time you're watching this. Those kinds of strategies that have expensive units that want to play for like good late game scenarios that might need a lot of economy are very, very good to do this with, right? So as soon as we lose our lose streak, as soon as we accidentally win a board, we're basically going to just stop doing this. And as soon as that happens, we want to just very suddenly get our board online. Now, two things to note about that process that are very important. Firstly, be very careful when your health is sitting about 40. That's around the point where health is becoming dangerously low. It's like totally fine at 60, but at around 40, it's like, okay, I've got to get my ass in gear. Make sure we don't lose. Second thing to note, very related, don't be afraid to burn through your interest at that point. It's totally cool to, like, you know, on the turn where you're trying to stabilize, usually you're level 8 when you're rolling down, but on the turn you want to stabilize, you really want to be basically burning down all the way to like 40 or 30 gold interest, whatever is required for you to get your build online. So I'll take a second to kind of show you an example of how this would look. I'll use mages just because that's kind of what we're in right now, so it's fairly easy. It's going to be a little tricky to do mages on the wolf round, so just to kind of finish up this video, let's go ahead and beat the wolf round in somewhat of a normal fashion, with like primordials. Let's see if we can beat them. The wolf round is going to be a little bit trickier than, like, you know, your normal rounds, but we do have 8 units, and we do still have our 3 warriors to kind of pair off. So the primordials are going to be kind of main tanking, and then we're hoping that the rest are going to be strong enough. Unfortunately, anti-mage doesn't really do anything against these, so something like this is going to be pretty effective. Let's see if this is enough to beat the creeps. And then as soon as we're done with this creep rounds, on 16 exactly, we need to basically start playing really aggressively, stay alive. Didn't get a lot of disarms on this Razor. We might actually lose this one. But, you know, a very powerful board for kind of what we want. Like, the CKs are doubling, and because they're the same unit, we're not losing demons. We got the 3 warriors online. We got 2 primordials, and then a 3rd one picking up the buff. So as you can see, this is going fairly okay. In a normal case, I think the Razor would have disarmed a couple more times here. So while it is tight, it does look like we are going to win this with 1 or 2 more. Okay, we're not disarming. Okay, we're not disarming. It's a disaster. We need 1 disarm. 1 disarm. Okay, just anything. Okay. All right. In a normal case, we would have won this creep round. That was extremely unfortunate. Wow, look at that. And just while I'm trying to make a guide for this. Cool. Okay, so we lost the creep round. We really weren't supposed to lose. That's okay. Anyway, this is the point where, like, it's important to kind of, like, you know, very immediately start playing very aggressively. We got to think to ourselves, okay, we got to make sure we don't die, right? That's our objective. I think it's a little early for something like Dusa. So we're rolling down. We're rolling down. I think I might have missed, like, one thing there. This is not really, like, here. Want 2 dooms in just like for the time being to kind of pick up some slack. I don't really want the eventual thing. In a real game scenario, this would be the end of my timer and we'd be forced into round 16. Then, you know, these 2 dooms picking up the warrior buffs would actually do quite a bit. You know, and then we'd roll down a little bit further. Again, we're burning through our interest here, which is totally fine. We're looking to get 3 mages online. Once we get the Coddle CM, you know, we're going to be looking for 6 mages. And once we're at 6 mages, our board is stable. You know, we'd end up winning, you know, probably around like 18, we'd stop losing for sure. We have a good chance at winning 16 and 17, but at 18, we'd like stop losing for sure. And then we've got our 6 mages online, very good economy, very good chance to finish this game first. Anyway, that's it. You've now seen the strategy. This is it. This is open fort, lose streak. Again, I'd highly recommend this, especially if you get Silver Lining. It's going to do very well for you, and it's very fun to kind of play in a little bit of a different way. I hope you'll, you know, try it out and enjoy it. And, you know, I guess I'll see you guys next time.